Let's state this clearly at the outset. This exploration isn't an attack on Christianity or any modern faith. The parallels we find, Saturnalia to Christmas, the polar sun to the Star of Bethlehem, point not to conspiracy but to continuity. Ancient symbols endure because they tap something universal. The recurring Saturn motifs, the primeval sun, the golden age, the polar light, are part of our shared mythic inheritance. They don't challenge faith, they illuminate the archetypal roots beneath it. As winter deepens and the lights of Christmas appear in windows and streets, we instinctively reach for stories about renewal and hope. Strikingly, this instinct predates Christianity by thousands of years. Nearly every ancient culture observed midwinter as a festival of rebirth, the moment when darkness reached its limit and the promise of longer days returned. The Romans called their celebration Saturnalia, honouring Saturn, a god whose identity was so ancient that even Roman priests admitted they were inheriting traditions far older than themselves. The themes will sound familiar: gift giving, feasting, decorated homes, candles and symbolic lights, the temporary dissolving of hierarchy, joy after a long night. Sounding a little Christmas-like? It should. Not because Christmas plagiarized Saturnalia, but because Christianity grew into a world already saturated with these motifs. It inherited them, transformed them, and infused them with new purpose. But the symbolic vocabulary was long established. It doesn't diminish Christmas, it just reveals its deeper roots. Across the ancient world, the winter solstice was a moment of profound tension and hope. For months the sun had been sinking lower, the days shortening, the cold deepening. Then, around December 21st, something extraordinary happened. The sun appeared to stop moving. That is the meaning of solstice, solstice, the sun stands still. For 3 days, the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sun's rising point hugged the same place on the horizon. To the naked eye, it seemed trapped at its lowest arc, hanging on the edge of disappearance. Modern astronomy explains this with actual tilt. Ancient observers saw something far more visceral, the light of the world holding its breath. And then, on the morning of December 25th, the sun began its climb again. The stillness broke. The year was reborn. This astronomical drama became one of the deepest symbols in human storytelling. Civilizations from Egypt to Scandinavia, from Babylon to Mesoamerica, saw these midwinter days as a cosmic threshold, a moment when darkness reached its limit and light reclaimed its authority. The solstice was not merely an astronomical event, it was a cosmic metaphor humanity could feel in its bones. Christianity did not suppress this ancient symbolism, it transfigured it. What earlier cultures expressed through the return of the physical sun, Christianity expressed through the birth of Christ, the arrival of spiritual light in the world's darkest moments. Far from being in conflict, the two narratives harmonize, echoing a truth older than any single culture. Light and hope return, darkness yields. And so the ancient solstitial pattern lives on, in candles, in winter lights, in Christmas vigils, and in the quiet knowledge that the long night is turning. The sun is born again, and the world remembers. Across the mythologies of Rome, Greece, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Vedic India, Polynesia, the Norse world and Mesoamerica, Saturn appears again and again as the ruler of a lost golden age, the era of peace, the age of perfect light. He is described not as a distant speck, but as the first sun, the best sun, the exemplary sun, presiding over a world of warmth and abundance. Astonishingly, many cultures do not portray Saturn as the dim, wandering planet we know today. Instead, they describe a stationary, world-dominating light poised above the North Celestial Pole, a cosmic lantern around which the heavens once revolved. They called it the cosmic mountain, the world tree, the axis mundi, the primeval throne, the star of the first time. This striking cross-cultural agreement was documented by Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschend in the landmark work Hamlet's Mill, where they asked, almost in disbelief, quote, "What has Saturn, the far-out planet, to do with the pole?" Such figures of speech were an essential part of the technical idiom of archaic astrology. In other words, the symbolism is not random. This was the language ancient peoples used to describe what they believed they saw in the sky. Here is where mainstream scholarship retreats behind the word metaphor. Saturn as a polar light, a cosmic throne, a sun that was not the sun. Metaphors, we are told, nothing more. But metaphors for what? Why do cultures with no contact, separated by oceans and millennia, preserve the same image? A dominant polar luminary ruling the heavens of a previous age. Perhaps myth is not merely metaphor, perhaps it is also memory, distorted, ritualized, mythologized, but rooted in something. From a plasma cosmology perspective, this possibility is far less outlandish than it seems. In an electrically active universe threaded with currents and instabilities, planets and stars may once have occupied configurations radically different from today. The mythic polar sun may reflect a forgotten celestial geometry encoded in the only language ancient peoples possessed: symbol, ritual, and story. And as Christmas arrives, a festival layered atop older solar and seasonal symbolism, it seems fitting to remember that long before the birth of Christ, another light in the north ruled the imaginations of our ancestors. If Saturn was remembered as the first sun, the polar light, the world axis, then what happened when that primordial order broke apart? Mythologists such as David Talbot and Ev Cochrane have spent decades tracing global mythic patterns, comparing traditions from Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, Greece, India, and even the Arctic. Working independently, both reached a striking conclusion. The ancients were remembering a different celestial order, a time when Saturn, Venus, and Mars occupied a far more prominent and visually dominant position in the sky. These were not isolated metaphors. They were recurring, coherent memories of a polar light, a central luminary, and dramatic interactions between planetary bodies that shaped humanity's earliest myths. Across cultures, this era is remembered as a kind of paradise. No harsh seasons, no long nights, gentle, diffuse light, a stable, warm climate, and harmony between gods and humans. The fall of Saturn, the end of that age, becomes the archetypal loss of Eden, the moment when the heavens changed and humanity entered a colder, more chaotic world. Here, Tolkien's words feel almost too apt. Quote, "And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend, legend became myth." This is not theology, it is mythology, but mythology often encodes deep anxieties, trauma, and cultural memory. If the sky once looked profoundly different, it would leave a mark on every civilization it overshadowed. And perhaps that is exactly what we see. Even today, our language retains the age-old ambivalence toward this most ancient god. Saturnian evokes the splendour and generosity of the Golden Age. Saturnine suggests melancholy and the ache of paradise lost. This tension is not a contradiction. It is the memory of a fallen world, the echo of a radiant past overshadowed by a catastrophic end. But modern conspiracy culture has pushed this ambivalence into distortion. Saturn is now saddled with black cubes, occult elites, archons, demiurges, and whatever else the internet can graft onto an ancient symbol. The online world has a talent for taking any forgotten god, stripping away his original meaning, and recasting him as a villain. But this is not the Saturn of antiquity. The ancient Saturn was not a monster, nor a dark architect of control. He was the ruler of the Golden Age, a symbol of harmony, abundance, order, and luminous stability. If certain groups today misuse Saturnian imagery, it is not because they are honouring Saturn, it is because they are inverting something that was originally positive. Inversion is a recurrent feature of fringe movements. Take a symbol of order, flip it upside down, and declare it sinister. So, rather than supporting modern online narratives, the actual history of Saturnian myth undermines them. Saturn's original role was benevolent, life-giving, and central to the memory of a world before fear. If modern interpretations seem dark, that darkness is contemporary, not ancient. Since we are clarifying symbols, we should address something else that commonly gets tangled with Saturn, the myths of Venus and Mars, two planets that have played villain, hero, temptress, destroyer and redeemer across world mythology. This matters because many online interpretations mistakenly project the violent myths of Venus onto Saturn, especially in fringe Saturn conspiracy circles, but ancient stories are far more specific than that. Venus, beautiful and terrifying. Venus has always carried a double face, radiant and ruinous. The Greeks saw this clearly, linking the same wandering star to Aphrodite, bringer of beauty, and to the serpent-crowned Medusa, a figure of terror, light and dread bound together. Across the ancient world, Venus was the morning star, the evening star, and Lucifer, the light bringer. Long before that name was twisted into something darker. If Venus once entered our skies in a disturbed comet-like state, a fallen angel, the legends of a fallen light-bearer suddenly make sense. Isaiah preserves a memory of that celestial fall. Quote, "How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star." In later ages, Lucifer was confused with Saturn, and Saturn with Satan, folding multiple sky gods into a single shadow as cosmic memories dimmed. And Venus itself remains strange, the only planet that spins backwards, as if still refusing to follow the sun's great clockwise precession. It turns Widdershins, from the old German meaning against the way. A planet of beauty, instability and defiance, and perhaps a survivor of a sky far less peaceful than the one we know today. Mars, the challenger. Mars too has mythic baggage, god of war, bringer of catastrophe, wandering star of ill omen. If Venus embodied beauty and terror, Mars embodied conflict, rupture and the end of eras. Why does this matter? Because it highlights the specific archetypal roles each planet held in myth, preventing the muddled modern trend of lumping everything scary onto Saturn. Saturn was the lost sun, the first light. Venus was the beautiful terror. Mars was the warrior and devastator. Three very different archetypes, three very different cosmic memories. And if the electric universe interpretation of ancient sky order has merit, three bodies that may indeed have interacted dramatically in ways that left psychological fossils in the stories of our ancestors. At the heart of the Saturn tradition lies the image of a polar light, a stationary orb hovering above the north rotation axis of Earth. Whether literal or symbolic, this motif echoes around the world. The Norse Yggdrasil, the Mayan Wakachan, the raised-up sky tree, the Egyptian Benben stone, the Tibetan Mount Meru, and the Greek Omphalos. These aren't random, they're descriptions of the same thing, a luminous central world-ordering presence in the sky. In the electric universe lens, such a configuration might represent the visual appearance of aligned plasma columns and celestial bodies in an earlier solar system arrangement. Perhaps plasma instabilities even generate shapes closely matching ancient depictions of cosmic trees, pillars and radial wheels. Myth doesn't look so metaphorical when plasma physics accidentally reproduces it. So, what does all this have to do with Christmas? Quite a lot, but not in a threatening way, in a deeply human way. Christmas is, at its heart, a celebration of light returning. That theme predates Christianity and yet fits perfectly within Christian theology. Why? Because stories of rebirth, hope, and divine light resonate with symbols older than writing itself. When early Christians placed Christmas near the winter solstice, they weren't copying paganism, they were recognizing something timeless. Humans have always needed a festival of light in the darkness. Saturnalia contributed lights, feasting, greenery, gift-giving, and a sense of cosmic renewal. Christianity preserved these symbols but transformed them, gave them spiritual depth and new meaning. Rather than seeing this as syncretism, we might see it as continuity, the way a river preserves the memory of mountains long after it has left them behind. Some symbols survive because they work, because they speak to us, because they belong to the architecture of consciousness. Even our most familiar Christmas figure carries the imprint of these older patterns. Santa Claus is not a modern invention, nor a product of Coca-Cola. He is a cultural fusion of ancient motifs that long predate commercial imagery. Saint Nicholas, the generous Christian bishop, Odin, the bearded Yule wanderer who rode through the winter sky, Saturnalia's traditions with their gifts, feasting, and midwinter renewal, and the deeper archetype of the polar light, the luminous presence at the world's axis. Santa's home at the North Pole, his flight through the winter heavens, and his role as the giver of abundance all echo this older pattern, the benevolent sky visitor who returns at midwinter with judgment and renewal. The Coca-Cola myth survives because it is simple, but the truth is richer. Coca-Cola merely standardized an image that was already centuries old. Santa endures because he embodies an archetype rooted not in advertising, but in ancient sky memory. Saturn was once remembered as the first light, the son of a golden age, the lamp of paradise, the ruler of an age without fear. Over millennia, his image fragmented, transformed, and drifted into myth, symbol, religion, ritual, and even conspiracy. Today, however, we face a different obstacle. Both cult-like atheism and religious fundamentalism, often two sides of the same absolutist coin, rush to dismiss myth as superstition, fantasy, or primitive error. In their haste, they flatten the very thing they claim to judge. They overlook the archetype. Myth is not ignorance, it is compressed knowledge, the survival of memory through symbol. It is humanity's attempt to record what was once seen in the heavens, plasma forms, cosmic displays, celestial configurations so alien to our modern skies that we now mistake them for fantasy. Yet at Christmas time, a festival built atop older solar symbolism, we still almost instinctively honour that buried memory. The lights we hang are not pagan, they're not subversive, they're not conspiratorial. They express a timeless instinct to recall the light that once guided us and to welcome the light returning. Call it Christ, call it Saturn, call it Sol Invictus or the winter sun itself. The name changes, the archetype does not. And so the old truth remains hidden in plain sight. Saturn, the forgotten luminary of the ancients, still shines in our stories.